Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the story. I think I've been working on this story for the last 15, 20 years, after I graduated from college. My name is Thomas. I decided to keep this slide, so you know that I'm from Puerto Rico. So the topic that I'm going to discuss is that we need more cowbell in business. I use this skit because I think it really represents the different personalities that you're going to see there in the world when you're in the business world. This skit is from 2000, and I think probably everybody's watched it, but if not, we're going to watch it. I think you get the gist. But what I want to talk about is the fact that there's some different characters in this story. And as you could see, you had a shot caller who has, only makes gold records. You have a naysayer, a person who regularly expresses negative or pessimistic views, right? And then you have a disruptor, who is a person who causes disruption in the market and disorder. I consider myself a disruptor. So my story begins in San Juan, Puerto Rico, where I'm originally from. I always say this because I was raised in a privileged environment. My father was an entrepreneur and owned one of the largest ice cream distribution companies in Puerto Rico. He built it over a period of 20 years. So he had no rich family or anything. So he's a self-made entrepreneur. I want to tell you also, I think I started my disruption when I was young. My sister used to go to the school and they wouldn't let me in because my grades were pretty bad because I wanted to play golf for a living. I think I disrupted the headmaster's day when I showed up in my bike and was like, you gotta accept me here. And I guess I made a pretty good sale for myself. They did. So I pursued golf throughout high school, obviously with aspirations to play professional, and now I'm a professional barbecuer and pizza maker. So I went to Rollins College, studied international business because that's what everybody does, just, when they don't know what they want to do with their life. And then I decided that I was going to play golf and do some real estate because that's what everybody was doing in Orlando in 2005. So luckily the market, or unluckily the market, turned a couple of years later, and I decided to join my father down in Puerto Rico as he purchased his first supermarket in the largest ghetto of Puerto Rico. I don't know why he chose that, but I guess it was a great store and a great opportunity. So I went there. The thing is, I started to work for my dad in 2008, and I always thought that I knew the answers, and I decided that I needed to buy a supermarket by myself because I hated working for my dad. So I had a friend that went to high school with me, and I decided to call him and pursue his dad's store. He owned a supermarket in another area in Puerto Rico that's not very well populated. And he decided to call my dad and ask him, why was I trying to buy a supermarket with no money? And which my dad answered, hey, I'll be there tomorrow. And he never told me, but he fired me that day and went the next day and bought the supermarket as a lesson to teach me, right? Just to let you know, that supermarket was his most profitable supermarket. And it did really well for him. Let's just say that. So I decided to move back to Orlando to pursue other things. And he gave me the opportunity, because my mom was pretty pissed. So he gave me the opportunity to go back to school, which they didn't accept me at Rollins because I had a terrible GMAT. And so I called a few friends and I borrowed some money, and I said that I was going to open a food truck. And you see this and you go, what the hell, right? How is this related to food? So back in my real estate days, I was working at a golf course, and I worked with a great friend of mine, Azarias, and he started calling me the tree, obviously because of my height. So when I decided to come back to Orlando, and I called him and I said, hey man, you have any ideas to name the truck? He goes, yeah, La Casa del Árbol, the treehouse. So that's where I decided to put treehouse for the treehouse truck. Now, I am not a chef. I don't like to cook. And I'm going through this process trying to figure out what business to open. And, because we were in the ice cream business, and we had to extend credit to customers, my dad always had about $1 million out in the street that he was owed. So I said, I need to get into a business that has cash flow every day. So that's why I decided to do a food truck. The other part is, I don't know how to cook, so I need to figure this out. So I went to YouTube University, and decided to learn everything of how to do a burger and grilled cheese, because I thought it was the easiest cuisine that I could come up with. So in this truck, they called us the stoner truck. I didn't smoke back then, but we did grilled cheeses, burgers in between 2 Krispy Kreme donuts, some fried Oreos, some fried Twinkies, right? Let's go. And I just wanted to assimilate to obviously the other food trucks that were starting to open at the same time that offered this really, they were chefs, they were more trained or classically trained, so they offered these dishes that I couldn't even read. So I decided, hey, let me go the opposite way and try to get known for what everybody eats, and everybody knows. So we went into this, and I always like to say thank you to my partner at that time, Nils. Nils he sold his car to lend me the money to open this truck. So I told him about the idea, and he said, yeah, I think I'm going to sell my car and we could do this. He was also trying to play professional golf, so I always have enormous gratitude for Nils for taking that chance. He told me about this. I said, you're joking. 3 days later, the car is sold. He gave me the money, and we had a handshake deal. These type of things, I want to say, don't happen very often in business, but throughout my story, I will tell you that it's really awkward, but it does happen. Nils in the one in the middle. And then we did also another sandwich that was called the Chimu, which was known for doing, steak, chicken, sweet potato fries. And then we did a fried peanut butter and jelly sandwich that became really popular as well. Then the pig life shows me. I'll skip the story, but I will tell you that in 2011, 2012, I decided to sell the truck. Nils wanted to move back to Norway, where he's from. And my dad invited me back to Puerto Rico to open a restaurant in his new supermarket that he had opened. And it was a great experience because I moved back to Puerto Rico and I did open this restaurant. Now, unfortunately, I learned a lot about the law. The gentleman that was building this big ass building decided to go bankrupt. And the person that decided to buy the building decided to void our lease. So a year into it, the restaurant was doing amazing. I get a letter basically saying you have to leave this property in the next 2 weeks. So it was kind of my world turned upside down, just like when they fired me. And I decided to move back to Orlando and try to figure this out, as I always will. And so we moved back to Orlando, and somebody mentioned that I should get into the barbecue business. Back then, Four Rivers was, having their heyday, and they had really no competition. So, as this person told me to get into barbecue, I decided obviously that Pink Floyd's was going to be the name because it was catchy. I never heard Pink Floyd, to be honest with you, so I didn't know what he was talking about, but I thought, wow, that name is captivating, and I think it'll drive people in, just because they'll remember it. So Pink Floyd's is born. Now, I credit this part of the story actually to my dad, who previously fired me, but he came back to the States and decided that he was going to help me through this. And one of the things he did actually bring out was that we have to be different. Originally, when I decided that I was going to open Pink Floyd's, it was just going to be another regular smokehouse. But as we are developing the concept, we had to find a way to differentiate ourselves. And we hired this agency to sit with us and just, brainstorm different ideas. And one of the things that I kept looking was like, hey, how do we change barbecue and how do we call it something different? And that's where we came up with barbacoa. Barbacoa is actually something that we typically do in Puerto Rico, and you basically cook barbecue under the land. Basically, you dig a hole, you put some leaves on top, and you cook the barbecue. I don't do it, we use ovens, but we just wanted to basically disrupt the market, because barbecue is such a traditional business where everything has been done the same way kind of forever, right? Obviously, you could bring in different flavor profiles, but the expectation of what barbecue was that you're going to have collard greens, mac and cheese, this, that. So we wanted to see how we can differentiate ourselves. And I put the two logos because I will like to say that even though you can become a disruptor, you kind of have to assimilate to where you're currently at and to kind of send the message to people that they have to understand what you're selling. Because when we opened, I would like to tell you that people didn't know what yuca was, or like, why are you selling rice and beans instead of mac and cheese, or where is the mac and cheese, and all these other things that they would ask because they are just trained to have this mentality about what barbecue is. We decided to only do 2 sauces, and one of the sauces is citrus, so it's like very different to the traditional barbecue sweet sauce that you see around there. So, Pink Floyd started in 2014. I purchased the lease, and I don't know if you were around Orlando, but this seemed to be a building that had been around forever, and it was Attila's Turkish cuisine. And I would like to tell you that when you walked into that building that day, I didn't ever imagine that this would turn into this. The gentleman had a bed in there. I mean, there was so many different things that we saw in that building that are not there today. So what we tried to do is we tried to figure out how to make barbecue different. And we wanted to also marry it to contemporary urban, because when originally I came up with the idea, I wanted from the beginning to be able to expand the concept. I didn't want to build only one restaurant. I wanted to keep expanding it. So I had to figure out, how are we going to get into other cities, and how are we going to differentiate ourselves as we enter a different market? And being in the urban settings and bringing in hip hop and different, that urban market differentiated from our current competition at that time, which was Sonny's and Four Rivers, that were very traditional, very boxy, and, following the same things, right? So we went into the business as a fast casual restaurant, quick serve, Chipotle, and before I opened Pink Floyd's, I decided to work for Chipotle for 6 months just to understand how the concept worked. I was the slowest worker there, so I almost got fired. But what I did learn is that obviously the speed of service and throughput was such an important thing, so I wanted to bring that into the barbecue arena, because when you smoke meat, everything is ready. So you could perform that fast-paced sale. There was nothing like this in the area, or I think in Florida at this time. And so we had to just find the niche. And how did we do that? We did it by bringing in different sides, where we brought in rice and beans, plantains, yuca, things that weren't traditional to the market. It was more geared toward maybe a Cuban restaurant or things like that. So we brought that differentiation into the business. So we found our niche. And at the same time, obviously there's several different dishes, bento boxes that came about, and things that helped us differentiate ourselves from the market, because I don't know that you've ever seen a barbecue joint selling bento boxes. But that was a very interesting story. The owner of Sato Sushi, when I went to dinner with him, he said he took him out of the restaurant and lost $750,000 in sales, and I handed my phone to him. And I said, "Where did you buy these bento boxes?" Because we're doing it. So at this point, I took a plunge, and I opened Lake Nona 3 years later after opening the concept, because that's what everybody tells you. You need to open a second store so that you could start testing the market and understanding what your demographics are. What I will tell you is I didn't learn anything about the restaurant business in the first 3 years, because when I moved my store to Lake Nona, I didn't look at demographics. I didn't look at anything. I went with my gut. And my gut was wrong. So I opened Lake Nona, and after 3 years, when COVID hit, I had to close Lake Nona, which is really tough for a concept that's that young. Because everybody tells you, like, if you close your second store, I don't know if you're going to have another chance to open another one. Because people lose faith, right? But COVID, I think you all felt it, was an extreme situation. So we had to adapt. And the only way that I knew to adapt was, how do we figure out to get food to people at their homes? And we decided to do a delivery route every day of the week. And even to the point that we went and I delivered to Miami, Tampa, Jacksonville, and all these different cities that would basically order once a week, and we would drive down and deliver it to your house, and you didn't have to move. Family meals and everything that you wanted to order. So we kind of had to think outside of the box, and that worked for a while. And then all of a sudden, when people were let back into the restaurant, that dissipated. So, why did I go into this business is that it was obviously the cash flow was great, and then it was a high barrier of entry. You don't typically cook ribs at your house because you don't have 6 hours to spare. You don't cook a brisket for 12 hours unless now you buy an electric smoker and you become a weekend warrior, which a lot of people come by the restaurant and ask me for a lot of pointers, and I just give it to them. But over the years, we've been very lucky that Pig Floyd's has found success. In 2017, USA Today named it Best Barbecue in Orlando, and in 2022, I think it was voted Best Barbecue by Yelp, and then the same time, top 20 barbecues in the US by Yelp Elites. But all this goes to say, we got all these awards, and we still have the same difficulties as everybody else in the business. It doesn't matter if you got awards or if you were extra special. We had a lot of difficulty post-COVID with, at one point, finding food, which was not readily available, and then finding staffing. I just want to say, you get all these awards and you're high on your horse, but at the end of the day, you still have to run a business and you still have to make money so you can pay the bills. One of the things that my dad always says is that failure is success turned inside out. And I want to say that I failed a lot in my life. And thanks to having a dad like him that was an entrepreneur and has failed before, he's taught me a lot of lessons, especially when he fired me. I want to share some of the things that we do at Pig Floyd's. As you can see, we kind of mix and match in our design. I don't know if a lot of people know Walter Mercado, but growing up, we had Walter Mercado to tell us our horoscopes. So I decided to paint it on the side of the building. And then some of the stuff that we did on like the menus, where we did Notorious sandwiches. I'm a pretty Notorious B.I.G. fan. And we got Gucci sides, you know. You're a little fancier. We also take a chance, right? And we've done different pigs. The original Little Kim, you know, Lionel, Swinel. And then we decided to do fun stuff for our truck, our delivery truck. As you can see, like we did Tekashi in the back of the truck with gold chain in the front, and then this is my sidekick Patrick. This is one of the things that we did during COVID, that we were going to sell Fabuloso in a bottle because we thought it's a great idea. So we've done some fun stuff, and then I guess I decided to open another restaurant during the middle of the pandemic because, you know, why not, right? I just closed one. Let me figure this out. And I wanted to disrupt something of a tradition, which is Italian food. And I wanted to bring in a different flair because I thought that there was an opportunity in the market with creating different pizzas and creating different pastas with our own flair and smoked meats. So I opened Pizza. Pizza, and I want to go back on this, is on Mills Avenue. This building originally was my first lease for Pig Floyd's. So I signed this lease, and the day that I signed this lease, the owner of the property calls me and tells me, Track Shack wants the building, so I can't lease it to you. Okay? I proceeded to lose my and went to visit Track Shack that day, and I said a few words. And but later, they become my landlord. And they believed in the idea that I wanted to put this pizza joint on Mills. So it's a great story, I think, in my opinion. Pizza opened in 2023, so we just turned a year old. It's basically a contemporary Italianish, and we use Italianish very loosely because I think a lot of people like to put restaurants in a box. What are you? We want to know. We want to see tradition. We want to taste tradition. And that's why we decided to choose the word Italianish, so that nobody can really put us in a box. I mean, I've gone as crazy as I want to put ramen on the menu just to test it out to see if it's something crazy, right? So we decided to do something different, and it's a full service. It's my first full service restaurant with full bar, so I've had a lot to learn. I don't drink, so I had to learn a lot about the full bar situation and how much insurance it is, by the way. Like, it's a little crazy. But we've been lucky enough that in a year we've been named both restaurants, Pig Floyd's and Pizza, were named recently top 24 restaurants in Orlando by The Infatuation. So it seems like people like it. With the help of Lure, we came up with some cool stuff. As you can see, some of the designs are very different. Logo and the pizza boxes and everything. So design goes a lot into the work that we do. We want to do something cool, hip, and current. Here's where the fun begins. So when we open this restaurant, obviously we go with the best of intentions and thinking that everything is going to work. And we came up with this enormous menu for such a small restaurant, and we took hits. And I think that goes to continue the story about being a disruptor. When you are a disruptor, you're obviously going to do things that don't work. And you have to figure out in yourself and put your ego aside and be like, hey, this just doesn't fit or doesn't work. What are we going to do that's different? And I think a lot of people stay stuck in that mentality that if it doesn't work, people need to assimilate to whatever I like. And really it isn't. It doesn't. Like, doesn't work that way. So I've been very big and very vocal with feedback. How do I think this is a video as well, right? Double click on it. Okay.
Are we trying to address the nation? I would like to thank you guys for all the support that we've gotten over the last month. Pizza is officially now 1 month old. It's been a whirlwind of an experience. We've had some highs and lows. We would like to thank you for your reviews, positive or negative. We're going to read a few of them and answer right here. We start with Adam K. Poorly run, inattentive staff. Did not acknowledge me until another staff member walked off to ask if I was being helped. Adam, I'm sorry. We f***ed up. We've been adjusting our service standards and we've been in training. As time progresses, service will get better, our standards will go even higher, and we will be able to execute the service that you all expect. Karis R. I would definitely go back if they had takeout because the food was good and I would like to try more of the menu. Karis, we're ready for you. Takeout is alive. I recommend you order today. Maggie A. Well, the meatballs were super dry and lacking any flavor and had a weird aftertaste. She didn't eat them and ended up with just pasta. Maggie, we listened to you and we got rid of the meatballs. We want to provide the best, and we can't be the best at that. We decided that we're going to step out of that game. So I'm out of the meatball game. Shireen M. I got the pulled pork pappardelle and the sauce was watery and bland. Shireen, we are making a change to that menu item. We have heard you, and we understand that it's not a dish that's translating well. It is a traditional ragu. It's not a traditional dish in America, but we decided that we're gonna change it and make it how you guys want it. Extra saucy. Alex G. It got pretty crowded near the host stand, and some tables seemed pretty close to that. On the patio, there was a lot of unused space. Because the restaurant is a small restaurant, unfortunately, we will have those type of experiences. It's a busy restaurant. It's 1,800 square feet inside. It's 1,000 square feet outside. There's gonna be additional roofing added to the outside so that we could use that space. We promise you, it'll get better. If you add your reservation on Resi, it'll be a better experience and you don't have to wait near the host stand. Joe G, the crust could have been cooked just a tad longer. Joe, I hear you. Our style of pizza is completely different to New York style, California style, Chicago style, or any style. We decided to go with our own style pizza. So if you would like it to be cooked longer, we'll gladly cook it longer for you. Just ask us at the table with your server. Thanks, Joe. I would like to personally thank the staff, my management, the guests for all your support, all your patience, all your feedback. I really appreciate you guys enjoying the concept. This is
I think you get it. So, why did we take that chance, right? I think a lot of restaurants don't take the chance to listen to feedback. When they open, they just read the reviews and don't give that feedback back to the guests that they are being heard. And I think that was actually, we took a big risk because that could have gone the other way, and it actually worked in our favor because a lot of people liked that we did that sort of video, and they actually attended the restaurant just because they saw the video. And we still get it to this day, so we actually have done more videos like that to keep it fun and light and understand that reviews do happen and mistakes do happen in the business. So I just want to put some of my best practices out there and kind of give you an idea. I'm not afraid of change. I think change is really good, and adopting a concept over like what I've done with Pink Floyd's over the last 10 years has been great because you see from the beginning of what works or doesn't work. And as you saw earlier, we have had to change our logo to Urban Barbecue so that it's easier for people to understand, because the question of barbacoa kept coming up, and it was kind of old to keep selling the same story over the last 10 years. So during the pandemic, we also, unfortunately, we had to add mac and cheese because it's a project to do mac and cheese and to do it well. I want to tell you that I've probably seen about 45 recipes for mac and cheese. We've tested so many different cheeses and we keep testing because I think we'll never get a perfect mac and cheese. You have to find a niche and you have to fill it. We have found a niche, but we also always keep in the back of our head that we have to translate to the customer. The guest has to understand what they're eating, and it has to be what they want to eat. Even though we want to create different flavor profiles, I think it's very important that you find that niche, you fill it, but you also remember in the back of the head that guests are the ones paying the bill. So you have to kind of make them happy, right? If it's not working, try something different. We've tried so many different things that have worked or not. The good thing is we're small and we're mighty, so when we make a change, it's a quick change, and if it doesn't work, we change it again. And that's very important for businesses to adjust and adapt. The risk of doing nothing is far greater. I've always taken risk, even if I didn't have the money, which I did. I signed Lee Road. I took over the Bubbaloo's in Winter Park, and that's been in permitting for 2 years, and finally now we're going to start the build out. But I get that question every day: when is it opening? When is it opening? I'm trying to figure it out myself too. It's okay to be different, because in the difference of what we bring to the table has been our blessing, because people recognize us as being a different barbecue than a traditional barbecue, and so they like what they see. Consistency has become a thing, obviously more especially after the pandemic. I think we have changed as consumers, and there is a higher expectation of the product and the speed of service. I think Amazon has kind of ruined us because they think that the package is going to come in 10 minutes. And I think they think the food is going to come in a minute. So we have learned to adapt to that. And especially in a full service restaurant, sometimes like people don't get that we have to cook the food. So we're going through that learning curve. You have to cook a pizza. It takes 6 minutes at best. And if there's other pizzas in front of it, it's going to take some time. So we have taken advantage of free advertising, I would say, such as posts and videos and stories on the media platforms. Social media has become the biggest advertising platform, I think. For small businesses, I mean, we don't have the money necessarily to pay for TV ads, for radio ads and all that, so we have to count on social media. The only negative that I see with it is that social media takes a lot of time. And the creation of entertainment, we've become, because you get tired of seeing food every day on your feed, is now we're entertainers and we have to have funny stuff and you have to have serious stuff. And so it becomes kind of its own job. And I want to say that social media has been very good to us, but at the same time, it almost takes a lot of time away from running the business. So if that is your business, great, do your social media platform, but running the business is more important than just keeping up with the social media standards. And I think with the pandemic that happened because everybody was at home looking at their phone, and that was sort of the entertainment if you weren't watching TV. So now, as we're post-pandemic, people are expecting that entertainment factor out of social media. So we've learned a lot about that. And I personally respond to every review or feedback that we see on all platforms, Google, Yelp, wherever you put a review, I'm gonna be the one answering. I put my personal cell phone out there. The funny thing is that nobody reaches out. So if they write a bad review, I write them back. I put my cell phone, give me a call, give me a text, give me an email, give me life, give me somebody out there so that I could talk to you and understand what you didn't like or did like, so that we can make a change. Obviously, I'm not taking every commentary that I get and changing stuff, but I will adapt if we hear more of that. And you have to surround yourself with a great team. I will say that our team is responsible for the success of the restaurant. It's not me. I do very little. I just keep them together. But I'm basically the person that just manages the crazies, because we're all crazy in the restaurant business. And I call them all my children because I have to be their dad, basically, right? And I take great pride in being their dad and trying to show them that whoever comes into our company, I want them, even if they join us for a few days, I want them to come out better than what they came in, and sort of learning that you have to have standards in your life and you have to keep up with those standards, even though life is happening. I think it's important that, we teach the next generation that there is responsibilities that you have to take and that you can't just go out there in the world and do whatever you want. So I want to say, be a disruptor, play more cowbell, don't listen to any naysayers, because at the end of the day, all they're trying to do is put you down. And just put yourself out there, make the investment in yourself, and take the risk, because nobody will. And I know there's a lot of lonely nights in being an entrepreneur, but at the end of the day, the risk is better because you think back of the things that you've done. And, you tend to be proud of yourself, even though your bank account is not full, right? Thank you, guys. Yeah, whatever questions you have.
Questions?
If there's any, yeah.
Thanks for telling us your story. So how has your relationship with your gut feel progressed since the Lake Nona event?
That's a good one.
Okay.
That is a good one. And I'll tell you the story. I think it's very important you recognize. I went to Lake Nona with the intention of trying to figure out, the owner of Lake Nona is Tavistock, okay? The owner of Tavistock came to the restaurant. I know them really well. And they own a restaurant group of about 150 restaurants. And he expressed the idea of maybe doing a collaboration and where we expand Pick Floyd's. And at that point, I'm talking to a billionaire. So like the mentality is totally different. They view the business very differently. But I'm very small potatoes, right? So when we were chatting, we chatted for 3 hours. And the question that I asked him before I left is, do I have to call you if I want to change the uniforms? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, well, this might not work, but you have an empty restaurant in Lake Nona that I'd like to see if we can work something out so that I can be kind of then in your sphere and get to know the restaurant and get to know you as a company and see if this works as we will continue to grow, right? And see if this makes sense. And when I opened in Lake Nona with the best of intentions, right? The market was shifting. I was a little bit too early. I was in an area that they were kind of pushing everything south for 417 and into their restaurant groups. And we started with a bang, and then all of a sudden it died. And I just kept trying to survive it, and for many years, 3 years, we worked really hard. So I didn't consider it to totally be a failure. I just think that I didn't look at some of the important things that are demographics, who are our customers, who really goes to the restaurant, who likes the food, and pricing. That area was very price sensitive. Hence why, the idea of the bento box, so that we could get a better pricing structure for people that didn't want to spend the money on expensive barbecue. Then when we closed, I want to say, obviously, I sat at my house and I thought, okay, what do I do now? I have one unit, should I just sell it? Because everybody in the restaurant business was telling me, if you close your second, you don't have a chance, right? And I decided to say, okay, what I have to do is, if I close, what am I going to do? I don't know what else to do. I don't want to work for anybody because I'm not good at that. And I said, okay, let's create something different. And one of the things that happened, and this is a very long-winded answer, sorry, but one of the things in the pandemic that these companies had a problem with was their management. It was very expensive to carry management, right? So companies that had these CEOs, CFOs, big salaries during the pandemic, imagine you have to cut all your staff, you're trying to figure out where to get the money. I said, well, let me see if I could figure out opening a company that's more effective as we grow, which I call it today the traveling circus, okay? And what I did is I created this thing where I'm gonna create 5 concepts. They're all gonna work together with each other. And basically, we will create something that when we move to a different city, we can open 5 concepts that work together, right? So I have Pig Floyd's. The Pig Floyd's Express is gonna be our drive-through model. Pizza. Then I have an idea to open a breakfast spot called Peggy Floyd's Bruncheonette. An idea to open a dessert shop called Sugar Poppy and Sugar Mommy. And then I have this crazy idea of opening a Mexican joint that just sells fajitas. But all these concepts basically work together to kind of support each other, right? So in Pig Floyd's, they can smoke the brisket and the wings for pizza. The Sugar Poppy and Sugar Mommy can make the desserts for all the restaurants. So it just keeps them, traveling together, and that's why I call it traveling circus, because, when you have 5 different units or 6 different units of different concepts, it's very hard, and people tell you you're crazy, right? Because they say, oh, why don't you just expand Pig Floyd? It's easier. But there is some barriers of entry with going with barbecue to other cities. Out there's a company that's Jim and Nick's. That's a big barbecue company that's out of the Carolinas. And they have their difficulties in even adjusting in the Southeast markets because flavor profiles in barbecue are so different. So that's practically what took me out of kind of the depression of closing a restaurant and trying to figure out, hey, I can do other things and we could be successful at it. So I decided that was my answer. And that's a very long-winded answer to your questions. I hope I answered it correctly.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Hi. So if you have a team member that maybe is not either operating at capacity or is not operating well to where you want, where's kind of your line of coaching them into being the great team member that they could be, or fire fast and just cut ties?
I've learned over the last few years that it's easier sometimes to fire fast because you can't teach people work ethic. right? I mean, you got to come and show up to work. I'll give you an example. Last night, I was closing at the restaurant at Pizza, and one of the staff members tells me, I can't come in on Sunday because I have my other job and I have to work a double. And I go, okay, like, you have to work here too. They know that you are scheduled here on Sunday. And he goes, yeah, but I'm gonna make more money over there. Okay, cool. Like, something like that, I can't teach, right? I can't teach the correct thing because he has in his idea that he's gonna get paid more. And so we run into these different things that you have to kind of navigate and see, is this team member here for the long run? Or is this team member here to just make money? And I think that we see that in the workplace. Like, is this something that really you like and you want to kind of learn and expand? Or are you just here temporarily? Because then we have to decide how much time we waste in training you or not training you, right? And if that person's basically telling you like, hey, this is not gonna be my forever, then we have to be very careful in saving our energy and trying to fix that person. We want you to come out better, but you also have to help us in that process because a lot of people are not in the restaurant business forever. And I get it, right? But I think in other jobs, you have to make that decision. Is that you're forever or if that's what you're temporarily gonna do? So I am in the fire fast mentality more recently. Before I used to really try to take my time and help through, but as I've been proven, even with people giving their 2 weeks notice, we've decided that day is your last day. Because all we've seen is everybody that gives us the 2 weeks notice never shows up the second week. So they show up the first week and then the second week they're like, I don't want to show up, and then we feel bad because we've taken their 2 weeks notice as, yeah, they're going to show up and follow through. But unfortunately, we've been taught that that's not the case.
Question. So since you're a disruptor, how do you balance or like when the pendulum swings like with innovation and new things to like optimizing and systematizing what you've learned from that? Like is it kind of back and forth a lot, or do you go like heavy for long periods of time and then you kind of go back, or like how's that switching gears go?
Sarah knows about this because I'm crazy like that. I might call her on a Friday and go like, I want to change this whole menu. And that's a great question. So I'm gonna accept this and people are gonna laugh, but I'm not the best operator. Okay, I live in this creative world. I think that everything is possible, right? I think that no is not an answer for anything, right? And so I've lived in that world and I've had a lot of disagreements with staff because of that, right? Because if I think something doesn't work, I keep tinkering with it until I feel that it's right in my head. And some people don't understand that. My chef, specifically, one of the guys that you saw there, we've tried our relationship 3 times and it hasn't worked, right? In 3 different occasions. He worked for me in the truck, then he came to work for me at Pig Floyd's. That didn't work for him, and then at Pizza, we invited him back, and that didn't work as well. So like, it's just, and it's basically our relationship of tinkering and playing around that I think, for some people need structure, and that's important in companies as you grow. So what I did is I hired, recently, about 3 months ago, I hired a former vice president of operations for Red Lobster that's been in the business for 40 years. And I will tell you, in the last 3 months, I've learned probably more than I've learned in the last 10, because they view the world in a very different manner, right? They view the world, just to give you an idea, 1 penny saved in something at Red Lobster equaled $1 million. So they are constantly looking at how do you get around it. And we did an experiment with them, and they came in and they looked at the menu and they cut down, for example, 4 cheeses, and they did this and they did that. And in a matter of 30 days, we lowered our food cost 7 points. So it's like, I've been trying to break my head trying to figure this out as an operator, and all of a sudden this person goes in and, almost like presses a button and everything is fixed. It's not typically like that, obviously, but you have to kind of adjust to tinkering and then going back and saying, is this fully operational? And then seeing if it works in the structure. Because I think a lot of restaurant companies, let's say, they sit on a menu and then they go, oh, we're going to change the menu twice a year and we're going to bring in and out, and then they just look at numbers instead of feeling the guest out and talking to the guests and going to tables and trying to figure out what works or doesn't work. In Pig Floyd's, we've had the same menu, I would say, for the last 3 or 4 years, and now we're turning 10 and we're going to totally disrupt the whole concept, because I think it's time to adjust to the current markets. In the Pig Floyd's in Lee Road, we're going to do bowls, because bowls have become the new norm, right? And we're doing a drive-through model, so now we're going to take rice and noodles, and I bought woks. I don't know anything about woks, but I'm learning through YouTube University how to operate woks and how to do fried rice and how to do all these noodle dishes, right? That people like and people would buy. But again, that's disrupting the norm. So when somebody's going to go to the new Pig Floyd's, they're going to be like, oh, where's the tacos? Where's the bento boxes? We don't have that. We'll have that on the mill store with different flavor profiles. And, I want to do char siu pork, and I want to do all these other things. Now, in my world, all my staff members are going nuts. Like, everybody's like, how are we going to do this? This is so different. This is not the norm. So then I become that disruptor where everybody's like, now we have to figure this out. And I hear a lot of no's, to be honest with you. Like, and even the meeting that I went yesterday, I started hearing no's from the beginning, and I started getting frustrated. And luckily, this person that I brought in to help me with operations, she's always saying, yes, we can do it, right? And so that brings a balance to the team. So you have to figure out, I think, how to bring balance into the team, where one is the disruptor and the crazy creative, and then somebody is over here corralling the team going like, we could do this. Because the team typically is gonna say no, because it's something different that they don't know about. So that's the way that I've done it. But being a creative and on that side, sometimes you can drive people crazy.
Awesome. On that note, thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you.